Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 280 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, and I'm pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, the editor of the Hockey News Montreal, the founder and the president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. How are you doing today, Rick?
Good day, my friend. I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well, too. Hope that all of our listeners are having a good weekend as we get ready for the last Montreal Canadiens hockey game before the bye week. Bye week coming up just ahead of All-Star weekend. There won't be hockey during that week, but I expect we'll still have lots to talk about for next week's podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably not a lot about the All-Star weekend, to be honest.
No.
I think we're a little bit checked out of that, especially with, I don't know, they named some captains. I didn't recognize all of them either. Like, I think there was supposed to be like some celebrities in there, but yeah. Anyway, I didn't know who they were and not particularly trying to find out today.
I'm right there with you.
But we do have a pretty good episode here lined up. Of course, we'll take you through everything Montreal Canadiens from the past week. A couple of games, some roster news. We'll talk about some prospects and some news from around the NHL. In segment 2, it's all about key veterans to help secure Canadiens championship window. And then in segment 3, we'll turn it over to our listeners. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, which veteran NHL players do you believe would make the biggest impact for the Canadiens to compete for a cup in the next 5 years? We want to make sure that we hear from everyone, and what's the best way for people to reach out and let us know their thoughts?
You can text us. We've set up a special text line, the Rocket Sports text line, just for you. You can text us anytime, 24 hours a day. The number is 5853-ROCKET, 5853-ROCKET.
And you can reach out to us on social media. Just make sure that you're following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, we have a website you can check out, CanadiensConnection.fm. You can find every single episode there. And make sure that you check out our comprehensive pregame previews and postgame recaps for every Montreal Canadiens game at thn.com/Montreal. That's the Hockey News Montreal. And here's what's happened since we were last here. And, we'll start with the lowest of lows, going back to January the 20th. Montreal visits Boston, and they lose 9-4. Sam Montembeault in net for 8 goals against on 30 shots. That was a .733 goals against average for him. Danton Heinen for the Boston Bruins completes a hat-trick, the first of his career. Montembeault went on to be pulled in the third. Caden Primo got in for about 10 minutes. He was scored on once. And not a good game either for the Boston goalie in Linus Ullmark, as he was scored on 4 times in 2 periods.
Yeah, this was a soul-crushing game for both fans who watched it and the Canadiens players and coach themselves. It didn't start so bad, but the Bruins got 2 goals in the last 2 minutes of the first period and didn't look back. Not a good night for Sam Montembeault. He didn't look good under the pressure of playing at the Boston Garden, the TD Garden, and it was interesting to hear head coach Marty St. Louis afterwards, who's been pretty supportive of Montembeault this season. He said, "When it got to 8 goals, I thought it might get to 12." So I pulled Montembeault. Sam would have a better start later in the week, but that was a low start for him and for the entire team. The only positives in that game were Cole Caulfield scored a goal for his 5th consecutive game, and Yoel Armia, who's perked up a bit and is playing well with one Sean Monahan.
Yeah, exactly. But things would not get better in the very next game. This time it's Ottawa coming to visit Montreal, and Ottawa wins 4-1. Honestly, I don't think Montreal had anything really going for them in this game. They were down 3-0 after 2 periods. Looked out of place. The effort wasn't there. The spirit wasn't there. It was a very quiet Bell Center as well. It took them pretty much until the end of the game to get on the board with that one goal, and just way too little, way too late. And of course, one Michael Anlauer, the former shareholder of the Montreal Canadiens, I believe about 10%, and new Ottawa Senators owner, did take some time to show up to this game. I think he was in the first row, his season tickets. That's probably the last time he'll be using them as at the Bell Center.
Well, unless the Senators play like that again when they're at the Bell Center, because he looked pretty darn happy throughout that game. It's unfortunate, given that it was hard to even count the number of scouts that were there that night. It's 2 teams who are expected to be sellers in the Canadiens and the Senators. There was multiple scouts from many of the teams. Dallas had 3 scouts. The Devils had 2. Tampa had 2. The Leafs had 2 scouts. Winnipeg had 2 scouts. There was a lot of teams there who were scouting, looking for talent, and I would say that the Canadiens disappointed on this particular evening.
Yeah, perhaps they decided that they just did not want to get traded. Maybe that's what was going on there. But also in that game, it was Jake Allen that got the start. And to be honest, I feel like Jake Allen got more flack for this game than Montembeault did for the game before. Not that Allen was particularly great, but I don't think he was all that bad, if I'm being honest.
Well, what's been consistent throughout this season, of those 2 games, 9-4 Boston, Canadiens scored 4 goals. They gave Montembeault some goal support. And Jake Allen just can't get any run support this season at all. It was a shutout, so obviously, the loss wasn't on Jake Allen at all.
Yeah, absolutely. But things did get a little bit better for Montreal this week. On the 25th at home, the New York Islanders come to visit, and that was the return of one Patrick Roy as he returns behind the bench for an NHL team and the New York Islanders in Montreal. And of course, that made it one Patrick Roy Day. Plenty of tributes towards him. Fans were excited to have him there. The media was pretty excited. And the Habs were quite fortunate to be up 3-0 after that first period. I don't think that the Habs were necessarily the better team in this game, but they seemed to just be able to put the puck in the net when they started to get going. The New York Islanders didn't give up, though. They did complete a comeback. They scored 3 goals on the power play, 2 of those on the same 5-minute power play that saw Brendan Gallagher take a pretty bad hit on one Adam Pelech. We'll talk about that again a little bit later, but right towards the end of the game, when Sean Monahan decided, you know what, I'm in the mood to win tonight, he goes on, he scores a goal, and that was the game, 4-3 Montreal.
This was, it was a game within a game. Everything that was going on around the game, off the ice, and then the emotions that spilled onto the ice. So many stories out of this game. But you're right. I thought the Island, from the eye test and looking at the analytics, 5-on-5, the Islanders were a much better team. But this was about special teams. We saw 5 power play goals in total between the 2 teams scored. And it was, I think Patrick Roy, he handled this really well, and we'll talk about him a bit later too. But he wanted to make the focus all about the game itself, about his team. He wanted to make sure that his team had a good start, and they didn't. With the 3-0 start in the first period for the Canadiens, Patrick Roy then had to call a timeout and settled things down. And then, the next point where the game changed with, as you said, Brendan Gallagher and the Islanders coming up. Sean Monahan plays the hero. It was incredible And even it was such an unusual day. If you're have been following us, have been following the media, you know that you see the visiting coaches. They're in the hallway, they're in the corridor, they give their any comments or game notes or pregame presser outside the locker room. This was different. The background for the Islanders went up in the Canadiens press room. The place was packed, and Patrick Roy spoke at 4:15. And actually, you could tell he wanted to get it over with. If you tuned in at 4:15, you were late because he had already started 10 minutes early. That was a legendary goaltender, bigger than life in Montreal, so you can understand it. Then again, not wanting to be the spotlight. Usually, the visiting coaches just prior to the game, prior to the anthems, they make that long walk across the center of the ice, perilous kind of walk to the bench. Patrick Roy, he didn't want the fans to notice him, to cheer, to do anything, so he snuck in through the Canadiens corridor and had to get special permission from Jeff Gorton to do that onto the Islanders bench. It was, and then. When was Patrick Roy going to be recognized? Well, the Canadiens ran a montage during the anthem, which is bizarre. I've never seen that before. And the place was just rocking by the time, whether that was intentional to boost the fans and boost the Canadiens and throw off the Islanders. I don't know. I won't say that, but everything was just so interesting and so different about the game, and then for the game itself to play out the way it did, a special night for the Canadiens, for Patrick Roy, and for Bell Center fans.
Absolutely. And of course, I'll mention too, myself and my colleague from Rocket Sports, Nathan, did do a live stream watch along for this game. So we had a lot of fun with that. If people still want, it's just on our YouTube channel at all Habs. You can watch the replay if there was any commentary that you wanted to see. We had plenty of fun discussions too. And like you said, it was quite the game, and certainly was happy to spend that with all of our viewers. The Canadiens' record currently 20-21-7. That's 47 points and 26th in the NHL. The Habs have a 1.8% chance of making the playoffs right now, on pace for a 78-point season. Make sure that you check out Habs Notepad, Habs headlines, and feature articles and game day posts appearing regularly at thn.com/Montreal. Taking a look at our roster news, there was a lot of moves up and down between Montreal and Laval, and I'm going to need a few minutes to try and figure out why any of this happened. So, big surprise on Monday. The Canadiens loaned Justin Barron to the Laval Rocket and placed Mitchell Stevens on waivers. Waivers went unclaimed and was eventually sent to Laval. I guess an abundance of young D did allow Montreal to send Justin Barron to Laval. But there were some follow-up moves that had me scratching my head a little bit. Then, of course, with Mitchell Stevens, too. That was a bit of a surprise. I thought with Pearson coming back, maybe that made sense, but I don't know.
It was so odd. And certainly this was something Justin Barron wasn't expecting at all. He was absolutely stunned, disappointed, didn't really understand why it had happened. I know the fans have been down on him, but it's you don't make development decisions based on what the fans think. Justin Barron has been progressing and has had hiccups along the way in the defensive zone. But man, I was surprised. Justin Barron was surprised, and even more puzzling was the Mitchell Stevens. First putting him on waivers, not a surprise that he cleared waivers and then sent to Laval. But the way it all happened left the Montreal Canadiens with three centers. And you heard in the game against the Ottawa Senators, you heard Marty St. Louis prior to the game saying, I don't know, I'm going to have to manage it somehow, but I don't know what I'm going to do with only having 3 centers, and Nick Suzuki was double shifted and so on. But Mitchell Stevens had been performing that fourth line role adequately, and contributing a bit of offense, energy line, forechecking well, playing responsibly in his own end. It was just really, really odd. And as you said, it made us. Did it make sense because Tanner Pearson was activated from injured reserve? Well, Tanner Pearson has played a little bit of center, but he certainly wasn't utilized by Marty St. Louis at center. And there was other moves that came later in the week that could have been made rather than sending Mitchell Stevens and losing that fourth center. So anyway, I know this is a long list of moves. I'll let you make your way through the rest of it.
For sure. And of course, we mentioned Tanner Pearson was activated off of injured reserve. He suited up against Ottawa. I don't think he looked particularly good. Certainly a little bit rusty and a little bit slow behind the play. Yeah. Did you have any thoughts on how he played in these past 2 games?
Yeah, I didn't think he was. We remember that near the beginning of the season, the old man line or whatever they were calling themselves. So with Brendan Gallagher and Sean Monahan, they were actually pretty good. Tanner Pearson didn't look like he fit in his return, and in the 2 games he's played, he just hasn't contributed in the same way, and we'll give him some time to get back to integrating himself into the lineup.
So after Justin Barron being sent down, Arber Xhekaj was called up from the Laval Rocket. And this, to me, was one of the most curious moves from this past week. I mean, there were a lot of curious moves, but this one in particularly. I don't know that he necessarily deserved that call. Did he break down the wall and force Montreal's hand to call him up? Probably not. He went down there for development a little while ago. He came back from an injury. They wanted him to work on his game, I guess taking fewer penalties, develop his skating and his puck handling and whatnot. Calling him up was just a really bizarre move from what I saw. And to be honest, he wasn't good in any of the games either. He suited up against Ottawa, didn't really have an impact. Suited up in the Islanders game, and again, didn't really do a whole lot for me there. Arber just looks very out of place at the moment.
Yeah, he when he was sent down to the Laval Rocket, he had a hard time at the beginning. He had a hard time accepting it. He didn't react particularly well, and he wasn't playing very well in Laval for the first handful of games. But then I thought he was good, and he and Logan Mailloux had formed a bit of chemistry, had been on the top pairing. You saw that Xhekaj was using his stick better. He had a better gap. He was minding the defensive zone much better. He was more disciplined. If maybe, a little shy to get involved, a little less of that physical play that he's known for. But then when he was called up, he looks the 2 games, he looks terribly nervous. He's when he gets the puck on his stick, he's fumbled it. He's handled it like a hand grenade. His physical play has been, kind of tentative. It's been there and then it's not been there. And I think one of the difficult parts is one of the reasons he was sent down is because Marty St. Louis didn't like his penalties, his unjustified penalties. And in the 2 games that he's been back, he has 6 minutes in penalties, particularly against the Islanders. Took some penalties that he shouldn't have. It's been hard to watch him go through that. And I know that they want to be patient with him. I know that they value him. But he's not the same player that he was. He spoke about that game on Thursday night where he took a couple of bad penalties, and here's what he had to say.
I don't think so. I think I started off pretty well, but then I think once I got 2 penalties there, I was kind of hurting the team a little bit, so I got to figure out how to stay in the box. No, I don't think so. I think they let me play, and they want me to play my game, obviously, but they definitely don't want me to put the boys in the penalty kill. And I think like some of those calls, maybe like in the minors they wouldn't call that, but I think they're calling that now. So I got to find a balance and not take too many penalties.
I thought that was a fascinating comment. First of all, taking ownership, yes, those are 2 bad penalties on Thursday night in the game against the Islanders. I've been told that I'm not supposed to put my guys on the penalty kill, but that they want me to play to my identity. And I like that. I like that the team, that's what the team is telling him. I don't think he's doing that right yet. I think he's playing very tentatively. I think he's thinking a lot rather than playing. But he knows he shouldn't be taking penalties. The comment at the end was the most curious. That I'm getting used to the NHL. I don't know. That wouldn't have been a penalty in the AHL, so I'm getting used to it over again. He's played more games in the NHL than he's played in the AHL, so he knows how it's called. I thought that was a bit of excuse making there, but Arber Xhekaj, not the same Arber Xhekaj that fans really enjoy watching.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of fans would be disappointed with his play in those last 2 games as well. We do have one more piece of audio from Arber Xhekaj, and this is him talking about a discussion he had with the coaches at practice.
I reached out to them and I said, I apologize for that penalty. I mean, there was no need for that, and I think we were up 3-0, and I kind of made a bad turnover at the blue line and got a penalty on that. So there's those 2 are definitely preventable, and they were great. They just said shake it off, and today's a new day, and have a good practice, and don't think about it too much.
So he took 2 bad penalties. He acknowledged that. I think everybody acknowledged that. The reporters after Thursday night's game asked Marty St. Louis about Xhekaj's penalties. All Marty would say was, I don't like it. I didn't like the penalties. On Friday morning at practice, right near the beginning of practice, you saw Arber Xhekaj approach Marty St. Louis. There's a bit of a conversation, and then Robidas got involved. And so what we're hearing from Arber is that he initiated, going over and saying, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And had a discussion with the coaches, and good on him for owning it and approaching the coaches. And they said, shake it off, have a good practice. So you might jump to the conclusion that's all been forgotten. However, Arber Xhekaj will be a healthy scratch on Saturday night against the Penguins. So I still think that there's a message being sent, and they want him to understand that he can't continue to hurt the team by putting them on the PK.
Yeah, I think that's the right call too, as it looks like he will be that healthy scratch tonight on January the 27th. So yeah, it is what it is. You hope that Arber Xhekaj can work his way out of this. It could be a mental thing at this point because there are a couple bad games there. But certainly you hope that he's learning his lessons and he'll get used to how the game is called in the NHL level once again.
And just before we move away from Arber Xhekaj, one more piece of information, and it came out on the broadcast a week ago, Elliot Friedman, and then on the 32 Thoughts podcast, is that given that the Canadiens had sent Arber Xhekaj to Laval, there might have been a feeling around the league that the Canadiens were, not as high on Arber Xhekaj as they once were, and so Kent Hughes started fielding calls from teams who were interested in saying, "Hey, what's happening? Is he available? What would it take?" Those kinds of discussions. And we're told from Elliot Friedman, and Elliot Friedman speculated that one of those teams was Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Flyers, which, if Arber Xhekaj is not a Montreal Canadien, why wouldn't he be? He would fit that mold, right? But Kent Hughes said flatly he's not available. So they confirm, they are reiterating their belief that this is. It was always known that Arber Xhekaj was a project. Given his rise to fame and jumping from junior into the lineup, all of that, that there was going to be some bumps along the way. Development is not linear, as I've said a million times. So there's going to be some ups and downs and healthy scratches and him going to the Rocket, but that doesn't change how valuable the Canadiens see him.
Yeah, I think that's good to point out too. And great story. I mean, you can't forget he was undrafted as well. So the fact that he's been in NHL games so early on in his career is quite remarkable. And like I said, let's just hope that he continues to develop and gets himself out of this rut.
For sure.
Continuing along with the moves that the Canadiens made this past week, they have loaned forward Joshua Waugh back to Laval. He came, he saw, he put up 2 points, and now he's back in Laval. I think at first during this call-up, he looked a little bit lost, but then he scored a goal against the New Jersey Devils, and from there you could start to see the skill there. It's still pretty raw, and I'm happy that he's back in Laval where he can continue to develop and work on his game.
We talked about it last week, that nice to see him get that exposure. Has had 6 NHL games now. There was one game that he might have looked like he belonged. The game where he got that goal. He had 5 shots on net, and was certainly visible offensively. He never did. He looked a bit lost on defensive coverage, and I think, as we said on last week's podcast, no disrespect, he just wasn't ready. He's just not ready for any extended time in the NHL. And that's what makes this a little bit curious, because had Joshua Waugh been sent down to Laval when Mitchell Stevens was, if they were going to send him down anyway, why not send him down when Mitchell Stevens was, making room for Tanner Pearson? And then you didn't have to be without a center on against the Ottawa Senators, and then you didn't have to make the next move that you're going to talk about following Joshua Waugh going to Laval to get another center into the lineup.
Well, certainly I did not have this one on my bingo card, but the call-up was Lucas Condotta from the Laval Rocket. Condotta did not play a ton when he was up. I saw him get booted out of multiple face-offs for some sort of infractions. This was another odd move. I think personally you and I could probably agree we would have preferred Mitchell Stevens just to stay up. But Lucas Condotta came in, I think mostly in that fourth-line role. Played one game and was zeros across the score sheet.
He played one game last season. I think it was the last game of the season against the Boston Bruins, and he had one game, one goal, so not a bad average there. If you put Lucas Condotta is a bit more feisty. He's known to drop the gloves on occasion and stand up for his teammates in Laval. But this is I would be very surprised if after the Pittsburgh game, if Lucas Condotta isn't sent back to Laval so he can get in some games while the Canadiens are enjoying their bye week. And yes, why did it have to happen? I would have understood all of these moves if there was a trade that followed, if this was a showcase of some kind. But it was bizarre as it played out throughout the week.
Yeah, and with Condotta and Xhekaj coming up, part of me was wondering, okay, do they feel like they need more grit? But they did this after the Boston game, so I don't think that made a ton of sense from that aspect.
Exactly.
Some more positive news. Alex Newhook has began skating this week. I believe he was out there a couple of times. So certainly nice to see him out in skating. I think this Habs lineup could use his speed at this point in the season.
Yeah, he's on track to return towards the end of February, at least from his initial injury. That was the speculation. He was out on Thursday ahead of practice, just in a warm-up suit with a light skate. Friday he was in full equipment, not with the team, on his own, but doing a little bit more edge work. And I mean, it's going to take a while for him to get back, but great, as you said, it's good news, great sign that his is an injury that was not season-ending. He's going to be back, and talking about centers, there's another center that's going to come back into the lineup.
For sure. And the big news from this week, Brendan Gallagher was suspended 5 games for an illegal check to the head on New York Islanders defenseman Adam Pelech. Absolutely disgusting hit. So we talked about this a little bit when we were recapping that game against the Islanders. This was towards the end of the third period. Montreal up 3-1 at this point. Gallagher skates across the ice, throws his elbow up over his head while completing this hit on Pelech. And wow, he ended up getting a 5-minute major and a 10-minute game misconduct. So he left to go to the dressing room pretty much immediately there. And this led to the Islanders scoring twice on that 5-minute power play, tying the game up. So in all this, Gallagher with a dirty hit and almost costed his team the game. Not impressed with Brendan Gallagher right now. I think if we were doing winners and losers this week, that would be both of our loser most likely, right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. A match penalty, well deserved, and I don't quite understand it. It was at a point that the Canadiens were in control of the game. It was an open ice neutral zone hit, a blindside hit. The left his feet elbow high, directly to the head. All the things, and maybe it was we were talking about ice time throughout that game, and I don't think that Brendan Gallagher is all that comfortable in his new role and his ice time, and we've heard that Marty St. Louis has been trying to change his game, trying to make him into a different player, and that just seemed like a moment of frustration, and that hit to the head of Adam Pelech. It was ugly. It was truly ugly. And I think what we saw kind of for the first time is Canadiens fans turning. There was very few, if any, that were trying to minimize the hit. I think some even were surprised. This wasn't not an in-person hearing. It was a telephone hearing that Brendan Gallagher had with the folks from Discipline, and that meant that it could only be a maximum of 5 games. And we had Frank Saravelli initially thinking that it might be 6 or more, but I didn't see many of the Canadiens fans, or even the broadcasters or media, saying that the 5 games was undeserved, with the one exception, and that's Max Lapierre, former Canadiens player, who is trying to turn himself into a commentator. And if you listen to Max Lapierre, you have my sympathies, because he came out this time and said it's impossible that was an intentional hit. It was completely by accident. It was completely it's not. And he said, I'm not defending this. Well, yes, he was. He said this is out of character for Brendan Gallagher, and it was just an absolute unfortunate accident. It's just silly. I'm sorry, you're silly. You're not credible. You shouldn't be listened to, because this was a bad hit. This was the suspension is well deserved. And I think that it's unfortunate. Brendan Gallagher, who is supposed to be a leader on this team, who is a veteran who's supposed to be providing leadership to all the young players and saying this is what it's like to be a professional in the National Hockey League, and he didn't have that hat on during that hit, and he'll be out for a while, and well deserved. The only other media personality that I'm going to mention here is PK Subban, and I know that we have a ton of listeners who love PK Subban, loved when he played for the team, loved his style of play, loved his big personality, and now he's gone on to be a commentator in the U.S., and he put out a video which I thought was interesting, and he said that it's the kind of play that you just don't want to see, and that it didn't happen in the corner. This is open ice. It was a bad hit, and that it deserved 5 games. I'm on board for all of that. I agree with you, PK. Where I thought it was interesting is when he said, listen, I've got to be consistent. Listen, Brendan Gallagher is an old teammate. I played with Brendan Gallagher, but I have to be impartial here. I have to be objective. Well, I don't know if that's the case, because there weren't 2 teammates who butted heads more often while they were teammates than Brendan Gallagher and PK Subban. They did not get along. They did not like each other. They fought in practice. They had legendary screaming matches in the dressing room. And then afterwards, after PK left and moved on to other teams, you saw that the 2 didn't like each other. So I thought it was PK is just kind of piling on there, and I thought he was right in terms of the action, but he didn't need to say that he had to be objective or whatever, because he's not, and I understand that. It's just 2 people that didn't get along.
Absolutely. And with that, I think it's time to get to our Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
So each week we like to highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect, and this week we're going to shine the spotlight on forward Alexander Gordon, the 2020 draft pick, 171st overall. He's a center and a right wing, and honestly, he's been having a pretty good season in the VHL over in Russia. 45 games, 32 points, and he's got 15 goals within that. So that's another Montreal Canadiens prospect over in Russia that we don't tend to hear too much about, but certainly someone that we like to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, and was kind of a surprise pick, that 6th round pick in 2020. But he's had a good year, as you said, but a tremendous week. On Tuesday, it was a 3-2 game, an overtime game. He assisted on the game winner, and he added 2 goals. So 2 goals and an assist, the assist on the game winner. Then he had the game winner on Thursday, as his team won 2-0. So that's 4 goals and an assist in the space of 2 games. Great week for Alexander Gordon, and he is our prospect of the week.
Sometimes we like to check up on one David Reinbacher as well, and it looks like David Reinbacher has a brand new head coach over in Cloton. It seemed like they fired the original head coach back in like the fall almost, so this has taken a few months in a hiring process, hasn't it?
Yeah, tell me if you heard this story before. David Reinbacher has a new coach. You're right. This happened in November, actually, towards the end of November. That Jerry Fleming and a lot was made of the fact that that the Canadiens were sending Reinbacher to Cloton, and there was a relationship with Jerry Fleming, a relationship with Montreal, good relationship with the Canadiens, blah, blah, blah. He was fired in November and subbing in for Jerry Fleming. The GM, Larry Mitchell, became the GM and head coach. So fast forward to this past week, Larry Mitchell was fired, let's say, as head coach. He's going to stay with the team as GM, and a coach, Italian coach called Stefan Mayer, is going to has stepped into the role as head coach. So this is the third coach this season for David Reinbacher. What was curious to me is Cloton announced that yes, Stefan Mayer is the coach, and he'll be the coach till the end of the season, but we're still in the market for a head coach. We're still looking, and that they hope that they'll have a bigger pool to pick from at the end of the season than they do mid-season. And yes, of course, Stefan Mayer will be a candidate as well, but we want to cast a wide net. So, boy, oh boy, things are going on in Cloton. As I said, third new coach this season for David Reinbacher. That's got to be a bit unsettling. And you know, I think the sooner he can get over to North America, the better.
Yeah, Cloton in general just not having a very good season. And to be honest, I feel like we were sold on the fact that Montreal had a pretty good relationship with the original head coach, Jerry Fleming, right?
Right, exactly.
But we'll keep an eye on that, and I'm sure we'll talk about David Reinbacher quite a bit throughout the next few months. Looking at the NCAA, the two top teams, 1 and 2, Boston College and Boston University, faced off, and Boston College came away with a 4-1 win on Friday night. So that's the two best teams. And Rick, you said that this was quite the game to watch.
It was, and an old rivalry, 100-year rivalry between Boston College and Boston University, and the fact that they are the two best teams in the NCAA. Boston College knocking off Boston University, the number one team ranked. And so that might change the rankings for next week, knocking them off 4-1 on Friday night. And we know some players in both lineups. Boston College, they got goals from Ryan Leonard. We were pretty high on Ryan Leonard going into the draft. Cutter Gauthier got a goal. Remember that Cutter Gauthier was just traded, and that he was offered to the Montreal Canadiens, and Gabe Perreault also picked up a goal. In net for Boston College was Jacob Fowler. He picked up his 17th win. That leads the NCAA. Terrific record, 17-4-1, 222 goals against, and a .924 save percentage. However, we also know players who on the losing team, Boston University, Macklin Celebrini, who is the acknowledged number one pick in the 2020, or will be the number one pick in the 2024 draft. He was a -2. Luke Tuck, a prospect for the Montreal Canadiens, he was a -3. And defenseman extraordinaire Lane Hudson was also a -3 in this game. Yet there's still other Canadiens connection. The lone goal, I said it was 4-1. The lone goal for Boston University came from Jack Hughes. No, not that Jack Hughes, the other Jack Hughes, the son of Kent Hughes.
Taking a look at Laval, I guess 2 out of 3 wins this past week, so not too bad. We'll take it back all the way to Saturday, January the 20th. Laval visits Belleville. I believe that was the second part of home and home with Belleville, and they win again, 3-2. Kaskazoo net faced 47 shots, looked pretty good. Also showed that he's got a little bit of a temper in there. Lots of penalties for both teams. Tied 2-2 after 2, and Heineman scored the power play goal. I know, Rick, you were watching this one, so I'll let you chime in with some info here.
Well, I think that the games, if you watch the Laval Rocket towards the beginning of the season, and you watch them now, there's just an expectation from the Laval Rocket that they're going to win, and even when they're down, there's so much more confidence that the team is showing, and that's not just. I know that fans are pointing to Arber Xhekaj or pointing to when he was with Laval, or pointing to Kaskasuo. There's contributions all over the ice, and really like the way Heinemann's been playing in Laval, and Jakub Dobas has been terrific in goal when he gets the goal support. So yes, Belleville and Laval, always a fun matchup, because there's plenty of fisticuffs. The two teams don't like each other, whether it's in the Place Bell or in Belleville, the barn there. These two teams are a treat to watch, and they have some more matchups coming up as the season goes on. So we're going to keep an eye on those as well.
A couple days off in between before their next game, and Utica comes to visit Laval. Laval comes away with a 5-2 win. A bit of a quiet game until the third period, where Laval scored 4 unanswered. And on the 26th, Laval has their winning streak come to an end. Syracuse wins 4-2. Laval just kind of fell short as the Crunch took advantage of their solid goaltending. They were up as much as 3-1 at one point. So Syracuse wins that one 4-2.
Yeah, pretty close. A one-goal game, essentially. There was an empty netter there. Dobish, again, played really, really well, made some big stops. And Joel Bouchard did not pull the goalie in the first period in this game. So that's progress for Syracuse.
Laval's record 18-15, 4-2, so that's a .538 points percentage. It's 19th in the AHL. So like you said, this past month at least, they've been looking pretty good, and they're really shooting up the standings. A couple of games coming up next week, 3 in fact. So on the 27th of January, so tonight on Saturday, Laval visits Rochester. And then on the 31st of January, Utica comes to visit Laval. And then once again, Rochester is going to come to visit Laval on the 2nd of February.
And just because there are no Canadiens games next week, there are Laval games. So we're going to be talking about them. We're going to be covering them. You'll find the recaps on thn.com/Montreal. All the Laval coverage is there as well. We'll be covering them on Twitter. And just one note that you can watch. Yes, there's on Saturday, there's the Canadiens game at 7 against Pittsburgh Penguins. Oddly, the Laval versus Rochester game starts at 5 p.m. So you can have a warm up watching Laval and then get right into the Canadiens game.
And we also like to cover the ECHL and the Trois-Rivières Lions, the Montreal Canadiens affiliate in the East Coast Hockey League. And they had 2 games this past week. None of them were very good, to be completely honest. Going back to January the 20th, Adirondack comes to visit Trois-Rivières, and they win 5-2. 6 days later, on the 26th of January, Maine comes to town, and they win 8-1. So just Yikes. A bad week. Rough nights for the goaltender. Yakov Novak takes over as the lead scorer on that team with 30 points. It seemed like at the beginning of the year, they were scoring like mad. Verbetic was on fire. This was the team to beat. And now they're really slipping down the standings. Right now, they're 10th in the Eastern Conference, 17-22-2. So a losing record for the Trois-Rivières at the moment.
Yeah, and Maine just crushing them on Friday night, 8-1. And Maine is, I believe they're a point behind with several games in hand. So we could see Trois-Rivières falling further. I think that there's always there's movement in the AHL. There's movement in the ECHL, and I've heard people say, "Oh, it's because they've lost this player or that player." I think primarily, as anyone who's been following the coverage, our coverage about Trois-Rivières, there's a dark cloud over this team. they're up for sale. The sale has been held up. There's money owing to for rent for the lease on the arena, and the city's mad about it. It was supposed to all be settled in the ECHL meetings a few weeks ago. It wasn't. I think that some of the struggles are because there's such a negative cloud around this team, and it's got to be affecting them.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense there, and we'll continue to cover the Trois-Rivières within our prospect report. For those who don't know, we also do the hockey news for the QMJHL, the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, and this week we'd like to highlight another great article that we've put on that website. And Rick, what can you tell us about it?
Well, Jeremy Boucher attended the CHL Top Prospects game for us this past week. It's always a really fun game to cover, and in a draft ahead of the draft to see some of the top prospects. The featured from the CHL. Interesting sidelight to this is that Jeff Merrick speculated this might be the last year for the CHL Top Prospects game, and suggested that going forward, there's the NCAA has their All-American Prospects game. CHL has Top Prospects, and Merrick seemed to suggest that instead of individual games, the two might play against each other, or a 2-game series, or whatever it might be. But there's talk of some sort of coordination between the two leagues.
Yeah, that would be amazing to go and watch that. So hoping that pans out for sure.
Yeah.
So make sure that you check out all of our content about Canadiens prospects at thn.com/Montreal. And if you're looking for the best English language coverage of the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, head over to thn.com/QMJHL. Time to get to our quote of the week, and this one comes from one Patrick Waugh. Of course, we talked about it being Patrick Waugh Day here in Montreal when he came to town coaching for the New York Islanders, and he had a chance to talk with the media and talking about how grateful and blessed he is.
It's very easy. I don't know if I have the right word in English, but it's very easy to be attached to him. Does that make sense? Do you understand? Is that correct, the expression? So it's very easy to be like this with Lou, because he's such a genuine person. He is, and he I think he just wants me to be able to coach my game. And I appreciate that so much. But the knowledge, and I said, and I'm very lucky because we have Jacques Lemaire in our organization, and Lou and Jacques are very close people, and I'm lucky to have mentors like them. I think I'm going to grow as a coach. I think I'm going to grow as a hockey person, and I think I'm very blessed to be in that position.
This, of course, our quote of the week would be from Patrick Waugh. It was such a big day. It was incredible news as the week went on that the Lou Lamoriello, the Islanders had made this change, that they had hired Patrick Waugh, and then what are the odds that within a few days the Islanders were in Montreal, and Patrick Waugh made this entrance, this bigger than life personality came in. And I think that folks are wondering what kind of coach he's going to be. We are aware of the type of coach he was in Colorado. He went on to coach the Remparts and Memorial Cups there. So what was he going to be like? He's legendary in Montreal, in Quebec. And what I found really refreshing from this quote is how humble he was. And I think that's just Patrick Waugh may have not made this quote when he was younger. I thought of Marty St. Louis coming in without experience into the head coaching position of the Canadiens, and but came in with full confidence and didn't want to show any cracks in his armor, kind of thing. Patrick Waugh came in with this big personality, but yet was so humble in that presser, and talked about how he's immediately attached to Lou Lamoriello, the GM, and all the experience, yet the passion that Lou has, and a guy like Jacques Lemaire, again, another bigger than life kind of former Montreal Canadian, but Patrick Roy talked about them as mentors, and that he can both grow as a coach and grow as a hockey person. And the fact that he's Patrick Roy, and yet he's open to learning, to becoming a better hockey man, from two guys that he figures that he estimates have more knowledge than he does. I think that's really going to. I was really refreshed to see that. How humble, how he talked about being grateful and blessed, and I think that's really going to help him, and maybe as a signal that he's going to be a little bit different coach than we've seen him be before in the NHL.
Yeah, absolutely. And great media availability from him as well. On a lot of occasions, it seemed like the Montreal media was very fixated on, this is Patrick Roy. He's got his banner up in the rafters and whatnot. But Patrick doing his best to kind of brush that off and try to not be the big distraction. Although it did realistically just end up being Patrick Roy Day.
True enough.
Ending the segment with some hockey news and notes from around the NHL. Coming out of Edmonton, they announced that they signed forward Corey Perry to a one-year contract worth the league minimum. He is yet to suit up, but he will suit up tonight on January the 27th for the first time with the Oilers. Since leaving the Blackhawks organization, he went and joined the player assistance program, and it's honestly nice that he's able to redeem himself a little bit and get an NHL job.
Yeah, he acknowledges that he made a mistake. It was a big mistake. It was, perhaps an alcohol-fueled rant in front of donors. That ended his time in Chicago. He's going to bring maybe something to the Oilers that they don't have presently, and we know what he was able to provide to the Canadiens. He's the kind of guy that you really don't like to see on the opposition bench or on the ice. And the only question for me is the Oilers are just cruising along with a 15-game winning streak. Is that going to alter the chemistry, or is Corey Perry going to be able to help further that? And we'll know pretty soon.
Yeah, we'll find out tonight if they're able to make it 16, or if perhaps Corey Perry brings some bad luck to that team. But either way, you know what? The Edmonton Oilers getting to 15 on that winning streak, absolutely crazy, and good for them. And
Corey Perry's the kind of guy you'd want for the playoffs for the Oilers.
For sure. Some news out of Philadelphia. It's being reported that they have signed center Ryan Poehling to a 2-year contract extension worth $3.8 million. So far this season, he has 14 points. He's found a role on that fourth line, and he's looked pretty good since arriving in Philadelphia.
Yeah, he's looked great. He's had even some time on the third line. They really like him in Philadelphia, and I'm happy for him. He had a bit of a rough ride in Montreal. His like so many others, his development was a bit mismanaged, rushed up, and then had a hard time getting back into the lineup and getting some responsibility. Given some time, he's been great for the Flyers. And as you said, not the Flyers haven't made it official, but so many outlets are reporting this, including NBC Sports, that we expect that it will happen quite soon, and good for Ryan Poehling. And I should say, he's become one of the premier penalty killer, in addition to his third or fourth line role, one of the premier penalty killers in the National Hockey League. So, given that he was a first-round pick from the Canadiens, we certainly wish him well.
The Flyers also signed winger Owen Tippett to an 8-year contract extension worth $49.6 million. They acquired him from the Panthers a few seasons back, and they're certainly betting on him while he's young. This season, he has 17 goals, and that's the exact same amount as one Cole Caulfield.
Yeah, he's been great for the Flyers, out now with a bit of an injury, but they are obviously like him well enough to lock him up for 8 years.
And our final bit of news before we head into the break, Bettman makes history by making it 31 years in the NHL as the commissioner. With that, he becomes the longest-serving chief executive among major North American pro sports leagues. And, well, it really shows because I think this league could use a new voice, right?
11,318 days as commissioner of the National Hockey League, and almost the same number of days that there has not been a Stanley Cup in Canada. And of course, there's no relation. There's no relation, but he was, he was appointed in 1993. The Canadiens went on to win the Cup. And watching Gary Bettman present that Cup when he had just been appointed commissioner in the last several months, and then no Cup in Canada since then. So I think that we recognize the tenure, we recognize the milestone. I'm not a fan of some of the things that Gary Bettman has done. I'm not a fan of how the Canadian teams have been treated during his tenure. But the owners like him, and certainly the franchises in the U.S. and the areas in the South that he's opened up and brought hockey into the non-traditional markets. He has to be recognized for that, I suppose. And it is news, so we'll mention it here. And listen, you can send either to 5853 Rocket or to our social media what you think the best and worst moves are for Gary Bettman.
I'm anticipating we'll get some booze in the text line as we're reading this out. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But with that, I think it's a good time to get to our first break. We'll hear a message from our sponsors, DraftKings, and then it's a big topic segment. Key veterans to help secure the Canadiens championship window. Stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Maybe you want to make a bet on 5 different players who are going to score a goal tonight. The opportunities are endless on DraftKings Sportsbook. There are so many different combinations, opportunities, specials, parlays, straight up money line bets, you name it. There's so many ways to play on DraftKings Sportsbook. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with the code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella. You can find me on Twitter at the Spinella. With me in the studio is the president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You can follow him at Rocket Sports on Twitter as well. You can also follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm. And just a reminder here, if you have not already, make sure you hit that subscribe button in the player or on your favorite podcasting app. And Rick, we've spent a lot of time talking about the prospects, but I think it's time to maybe talk about some of the veteran guys that the Montreal Canadiens might need. And I think we'll start this off by taking a look at an article published by The Athletic not too long ago, in which they are talking about the probability in which NHL teams have the best and worst odds of winning the Stanley Cup in the next 5 years. They did two separate articles, one for the best, one for the worst, and I think they did a pretty good job. What did you think about this, Rick?
Yeah, I give credit to somebody who is who puts this out and puts their name on it and is willing to be criticized by almost everybody because it's with so many variables over 5 years. It's almost impossible to get the numbers just right. So Sean McKindo, you may know him better as Down Goes Brown on social media, did this. And this isn't the first time he did this in 2016, 2018. He's, I guess you would have to say, a qualified success. He was right on some things, wrong on other things. And so he's given it a go again, and and done, as you explained, the probability that a particular team is going to win a Stanley Cup in 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, or 2028. So in the next 5 years, what are the odds that your team is going to win the Stanley Cup? And he put them into, here are the teams that in his estimation have the worst odds, and a different article for the best odds. He offered some caveats in the first article, and he said, your first reaction is going to be that the percentage is too low. And that just makes sense from a statistical point of view because there are 32 teams and there are 5 years. So that 32 the percentages for those 32 teams have to add up to 500. Why? Because 100% each year. So those percentages are going to be low. They're going to be on average of 16% plus or minus, lower or higher, depending on if they have a good chance or a bad chance. Does that math make sense? Did I explain that too quickly? 500 divided by 32 is 16. So if you have a better than 16% chance, you have a good chance of winning the Stanley Cup. If you have a lower, you have a less than average chance. That's just math, and I'm with him there. He said that this is going to be startling to some people. It's going to elicit criticism, and he's happy to do that and happy to hear from you. So where did the Canadiens end up, and why? Well, I think if you talk to Montreal Canadiens fans, the team has, with Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes, they've been in this rebuild for 2 years. They've been at the bottom of the standings, and they've been gathering draft picks, and they've been gathering prospects. So what? The Stanley Cup is guaranteed in 2 years? They'll make the playoffs next year and Stanley Cup the following year? Is that the way it's going to work? I think that, and sure, fans are naturally optimistic. But I think that the roster is going to take more than just what the Canadiens have now. And Kent Hughes has said that himself, that they've stockpiled draft picks and they're not necessarily going to use all 22 draft picks over the next couple of years. That they're going to package some together to bring in more talent, like they did with Alex Newhook, like they did with Kirby Dach. So is more talent needed? Yes. Do fans have to be patient waiting for the talent that they've already drafted to get to their prime? Yes. And then you have the tricky part that the timing has to all work. Everybody has to reach their peak at the same time for you to be able to be a cup winner. So long preamble, very long preamble. Go ahead.
But I think that sets the tone pretty well. I'll just start off by giving you the number 1 with the best chance and the number 32 with the least amount of chance. So at number 1, it is the Edmonton Oilers. And I do like this pick coming from The Athletic. I think that makes a lot of sense. Given like how well they've played recently. You look at their roster, look no further than McDavid and Draisaitl. How do you not put them at number 1 with the best chance to win a cup within the next 5 years? And then on the other end, the San Jose Sharks with the lowest chance of winning a cup makes sense too. At the bottom of the standings, you look at the roster, it's awful right now. There aren't too many very good NHL pieces down there. So where do the Canadiens land? Well, they rank number 19, 12% chance of a championship within the next 5 years. And I think that's pretty reasonable on their end. Look, they've been in a rebuild, like you said. It's been a few years now. By the end of the 5 years, I think it's fair to say they'll be getting to that pretty good point as opposed to getting to that cup favorite. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and that's exactly what Sean McKindo said is that the Canadiens, with the injection of talent, are going to be a pretty good team with all this talent on the way. But ask the question, do they have enough top-end talent to break through? That's still the question. And the answer is maybe not. They're going to have to. Especially given that they've had a top 5 pick, that they've had the first overall pick. Where is that elite player? We asked that last season. So you look through the top 10. The Edmonton Oilers, as you said, top of the ranking, and have a 35% of getting a cup over sometime in the next 5 years. That makes sense when you look at the elite talent that they have. Colorado Avalanche with a 34% chance. Dallas Stars with a 30% chance. Look at all the talent that New Jersey has, 26%. Carolina Hurricanes, they've been hanging around for the last few years, 25%. There's a Canadian team at number 8, the Vancouver Canucks. The Leafs are at 11%. The Jets are at 12%. So the Canadiens at 19, given where they are in the rebuild, I don't think that sounds all that out of place. They are just below the average, and yes, things could change. Things could change if the Canadiens start acquiring those kinds of players that are going to add elite talent to the pool. And we know that there have been what could be considered franchise-changing players made available. In the past year, we've seen that. Yaroslav Askarov at the draft, Cutter Gauthier at the draft made available. So at some point in time, the Canadiens are either going to draft an elite talented player or they're going to add them using all of the draft assets that they've accumulated.
And just one more thing I noticed on this list that they put out, coming at number 15, and this might be a surprise to some, but I actually think it makes sense, is the Chicago Blackhawks, given a 14% chance. And why are they this high? Well, they do have a franchise-altering player in one Connor Bedard. Obviously, there's only one Connor Bedard, but it just takes one player to really change everything, to be completely honest. And they're there at 15, sandwiched in between Detroit at 16 and Ottawa at 14. Two teams that in the Atlantic that have been rebuilding for a few seasons now. So I just thought it was interesting there that the Chicago Blackhawks jump all the way up to 15 in this rankings.
That's a great point. It's that elite talent. It's a Connor McDavid kind of talent that gets injected into Chicago that makes them. They certainly have a lot of work to do to build around Connor Bedard, but they have a leg up on a team like the Montreal Canadiens, who was either unfortunate that their first overall pick depending on your perspective, that their first overall pick was not that elite talent, or they made a bad choice, or if you look at when they had a top 5 pick that they didn't pick a Michkov, or if you're of that opinion. Yes, a great point that Chicago's gotten a boost from Connor Bedard. Unfortunately, it wasn't the Montreal Canadiens.
Absolutely. And with that, like I said at the top, I think we focused a lot on young players and which young players we see as part of the core in the future, some of the top prospects coming down the pipeline. But I think that you can't have this team turn the corner without having some key veterans in the lineup. So I think we wanted to take a few minutes here just to look up and down the lineup and consider who they might consider retaining as part of the core and who they might want to acquire as they turn the corner and become a perennial contender at some point down the road here. So with that, Rick, what are your thoughts?
Well, and that's key. You look at the teams who are Stanley Cup contenders, and they always have that group of veteran talent that brings leadership, that knows how to win in the playoffs, that brings that experience and is the perfect complement to the elite talent that they have. And I think that when Canadiens fans look at the current group of players, that they kind of wax poetic about the veterans that are veterans currently on the team. So I've seen lots of comments from both media and from fans saying David Savard is exactly that kind of player who is a mentor to the young defenseman, who has been through the playoffs, who has won a Stanley Cup, who can be a corner piece in a cup contending team of the future. And then you realize that we're talking about 5 years here. Mm-hmm. Canadiens still have some pieces to acquire. They still have the elite pieces to acquire, and we need all of all of those pieces to act at their peak together. We're talking about a 5-year window. At least that's what the Athletic article is all about. Well, one David Savard is 33 years old right now. If the Canadiens are looking at a window of 5 years, what's David Savard's play going to be like in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years? Is he still going to be that crucial piece? I mean, this is years ago, but now that when he won the Cup with Tampa, he was a third pairing defenseman on that team. So I think the lens has to change a bit. And the same thing goes for a Sean Monahan. Sean Monahan's 29 years old. And I know there's all kinds of fan attachment to him right now. He's had a great season. The way the players, younger players, speak about him being clutch. But Sean Monahan is just too valuable an asset right now. You can't not trade him in order to get the pieces back that you'll need either to package together to get that elite player. You need to use his excellent season to further your pursuit of being a contender, because in 5 years he'll be 34. We know that he's injury prone. How many injuries are going to happen in the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? And I'll go down the list. Tanner Pearson's 31. Christian Dvorak, a little younger, at 27. Is he going to be a part of that contend? Is there a place for a Christian Dvorak? And I guess Brendan Gallagher this season, and then 3 more seasons, and he's already 31. Mike Matheson's 29. I saw a conversation by the mainstream media folks that online this week that said you cannot possibly trade Mike Matheson. You cannot. Why? Well, their reasons. He skates incredibly well. That's true. Mike Matheson plays the most minutes. That's true. He's from Montreal. That's true. However, Mike Matheson had a great start to the season. His offense has declined considerably. He's terrible in his own end, and he's not a very good power play quarterback, to be honest. At 29 years old, is he going to fit into to be this this leader as the Canadiens get closer to be a cup contender? I don't know. I don't think so. And if you can get a lot for Sean or for Mike Matheson now, or if you can get something for a considerable amount for Sean Monahan or David Savard or Tanner Pearson, do it. Because think about that 5-year window. And the odds aren't even that good in the next 5 years. So
Yeah.
I think that when the Montreal Canadiens get to that point, when they get to the point where they have this core of players that are moving together, in 5 years, Nick Suzuki is going to be 29 years old. He's going to be a veteran. This group that Caden Gooley, he's going to be 27 years old and in his prime. The idea was to get these players together, give them responsibility, and let them provide the leadership. Learn in their young years and provide the leadership. And then at that stage, the Canadiens will be buyers. They'll be buyers at the trade deadline, and they'll go out and add a Sean Monahan at that stage that will give them that kind of grit, that kind of leadership that they need going into the playoffs. All of that's going to change from right now them being sellers to them being buyers. So I really appreciate what David Savard has done. I really appreciate what Brendan Gallagher has done. I really appreciate what Sean Monahan has done. But I think that if the Canadiens can get some assets to help them get that elite talent, that's the direction that they want to go. And that it's probably easier to add that veteran leadership later, once you have all your pieces together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't see the issue with surrounding some of these younger players with good veterans like Savard right now. But of course, Savard's doesn't have a future in Montreal at that point. So yeah, I think now's the perfect time to try and move on from some of these pieces. And great point by you mentioning the age and the injury history. Look no further than Brendan Gallagher if you're concerned about age and having a history of injuries, because if you do hang on to a David Savard, yeah, he might be playing good for you right now, but in the future, I'm not saying that he has a potential to become what Brendan Gallagher currently is, but look, Gallagher is in a position where he's had a lot of injuries. He's not getting any younger. His skating's terrible. He's struggling to find a spot in the lineup. And now I think this past week, fans have really soured on Brendan Gallagher, and maybe his leadership's coming into question a little bit. So like you said, I think that you really have to consider what the ages of a lot of these players, because once you get to that wrong side of 30 and you have quite a few injury histories, it's hard to keep competitive. Maybe you find a role leadership wise, but on the ice, it's very difficult. I think a lot of players, their skating regresses fast. And I think Joel Edmondson's another good example of that. We're going from great veteran guy to have in the lineup, and then you start looking at his skating, his ability to follow the play, and it regresses pretty fast. Yeah,
for sure. It falls off a cliff, and you have to get value from that player by moving him to the current contenders before the players hit that wall.
Absolutely. And speaking of Nick Suzuki too, did you know that this is his 5th season in the NHL? I feel like we always talk about Nick Suzuki like he's a young player, he's for a captain, sure, he's a young captain, but he's certainly not a prospect anymore. And I think at this point, how soon can we start referring to Suzuki as a veteran? And the good thing about Suzuki is he was around the team when they were pretty successful and made that run to the Cup final. He had a good role on that team. He has that experience. And if he can continue to develop his leadership, I think that's your big key veteran going forward within this 5-year window that we've talked about. Also, Cole Caulfield, 3 pro seasons so far. I know that this is probably going to be his first full 82 games. But look, when you get to the end of this 5 years, he's certainly going to be a veteran. Caden Gooley as well. He's a guy that's getting a ton of experience under his belt. So within this 5-year window, I think those guys essentially become your key veterans. Outside of that, like you said, I think that at some point you certainly want to add a veteran two-way forward. I don't know that that's in the organization right now, but maybe a Kirby Dach can end up being that at some point. Of course, a veteran shutdown D. Maybe some people look at David Savard that way, but of course, I'd rather move on from Savard this season. If you want to keep a veteran, at least one veteran D around for the remainder of the season, it's probably Matheson, but again, you probably look to flip him out in the summer, and you can just plug in various guys around this young core going forward too. And at some point too, you mentioned that, look, when Montreal gets good, maybe they'll be looking to acquire that Sean Monahan type player. Absolutely. I think you do need that veteran going forward in the mix as well.
Yeah, that's just it. I think you have to take your head out of what the team looks like now and project forward. And that applies to a Nick Suzuki and a Cole Caulfield. Good point. They have been through an unusual Stanley Cup run, but a Stanley Cup run nonetheless, and have learned from a Carey Price, have learned from a Shea Weber. They were there. They experienced it. And now they should be more. It should increase year by year the reliance of the other team members on them. Caden Gooley in that mix as well, a natural leader, and you have to also then project for the current veterans that they may be helping now, and they may have helped in the transition. But once this gets to be a contending team, there will be holes to fill, and the veterans that are with the Canadiens now will not be part of that. I don't see them necessarily being part of that, but that's just doing that mental exercise of moving yourself to a team that 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, and trying to imagine what that's going to look like. So who are the veterans that this team needs? I don't think we know. I think that you want someone at that stage with all the qualities of a Sean Monahan, all the qualities that he has now, but not Sean Monahan 3, 4, 5 years from now. I just don't think that's going to work.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and appreciate that insight as well. So with that, before we move along to our Canadiens Connection question of the week, did you have any final comments that you wanted our listeners to hear?
Well, I think that we have to remember that a rebuild is additions, adding in talent, and hopefully at some point some real elite talent. But it also is subtractions, and unfortunately, it can include prospects that get displaced, that get bumped down the depth chart, but it also includes players who are maybe at their peak and value can be obtained from them, or past their peak, and it's time that they moved along. And those include, unfortunately, for fans, those include some fan favorites.
Absolutely. So with that, I think we'd like to ask all of our listeners this. Which veteran NHL players do you believe would make the biggest impact for the Canadiens to compete for a cup in the next 5 years? We want to make sure that we hear from you, and we'll give you a little break to think about it and let us know. I think we'll take our final break here. Stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM
its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The Rocket Sports Media team wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition. Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, log in to thn.com/Montreal, your year-round source for anything Habs related. That's thn.com/Montreal.
Welcome back to episode 280 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Please make sure you're following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm. Also, feel free to text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And Rick, that was a nice discussion that we had in that second segment. It's nice to put things in perspective a little bit.
I think so, and we try to do the kinds of discussions that you don't hear anywhere else, and I think you really need to, when we're looking forward, when we're looking forward in a month's time to the trade deadline. We want to project what would be some good value for the veterans that the Canadiens have, but then think ahead over the next 2 years, over the next 4 years, over the next 5 years, to the end of the decade, because the ultimate goal, it's been 30 years since the Canadiens have won the Stanley Cup, and Patrick Roy was in goal in 1993. So the goal is a Stanley Cup, so it's going to need some major decisions and a major injection of talent.
Absolutely. And we'll be here to give you all the best Montreal Canadiens coverage here from Rocket Sports. Here's what you need to know. We do Montreal Canadiens coverage for the hockey news, and you can find all of that content at thn.com/Montreal. All the Canadiens coverage there in one place. If you're interested in more of our multimedia type content, we do have a YouTube channel. Just search at All Habs. You'll be able to pull that up. Hit subscribe and check out all the content on there. Throughout the week, there's a couple different things we do. Amy Johnson hosts two shows, the Habs Hockey Report Show and the Rocket Hockey Report Show. The Habs Hockey Report Show, the latest one is entitled Kent Hughes Speaks 5 Takeaways from his midseason review. And the Rocket Hockey Report Show, Xhekaj called up, Barron sent down. What's next? Check out both of those. Amy does a great job covering both the Montreal Canadiens and their AHL affiliate, the Laval Rocket. Leave a like, leave a comment, get involved in that discussion too. Amy loves to hear from everybody, and hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Also, the Canadiens Connection podcast, this one that you're listening to right now, we've started putting that one up on YouTube. People seem to like to listen to it on there as well. So make sure you check that out. The latest episode is entitled How Terry Ryan Played Pro Hockey at the Age of 47, plus Logan Mailloux update. Make sure that you check that out. We'll put that out every single Monday on our YouTube channel, so you can certainly tune into it there. Also, we have a lot of fun doing live stream watch-alongs on YouTube. This is something new we started doing this season. This past Thursday on the 25th of January, I was joined by my Rocket Sports Media colleague Nathan, and it was a huge success. Montreal took on the New York Islanders. Coincidentally, that ended up being Patrick Waugh Day, so we had tons of people tuning in. We have a live chat there. You get commentary. We have all sorts of great discussions about Montreal, and we would really appreciate if more people would tune in. Our next one is coming up on February the 6th. Once again, that'll be a Tuesday, joined with my Rocket Sports Media colleague Nathan. It's going to be Washington versus Montreal, and we'll have a lot of fun with that one as well. So mark the calendar, hit subscribe. We also have a notification bell. That way that you get notified every time we put out new content. And leave a like, leave a comment, let us know all of your thoughts.
So I use the notification bell, and I got a little notification saying Rocket Sports is going live. And I went there, and it was incredible. As you said, it was a huge success. Our live stream watch-alongs are growing just exponentially each time they happen. This past week set a record. You guys were tremendous, and listen, all you have to, it's easy. Yeah, you tune into the game, you put your TV on, you mute the volume. You don't want to hear Gary Gallagher anyway, and instead you get to hear yourself, Michael, and Nathan. Great commentary, talking about the game, talking about some background stories, things that are fascinating and interesting to hear, as well as all of the people in the chat and joining from all over the world and all interacting. It's a online watch along party for Habs fans, and also we get some of the opposition fans in there. It's tremendous. So coming up, as you said, February 6th, the Montreal Canadiens versus the Washington Capitals. You want to be on our YouTube channel. You want to be a part of the next watch along live stream.
And really like to highlight there, too, that this is an interactive thing. So get into that live chat. We want to make sure that we hear from everybody. And don't hesitate. Let us know your thoughts and questions, too. Nathan and I will be more than happy to get to those. And while you're at it and doing all this subscribing, make sure you subscribe to this podcast, the premier Rocket Sports Radio podcast on your favorite podcasting app, the Canadiens Connection. You can find every single episode at canadiensconnection.fm as well. We're here every single Saturday to give you great content. We're here. We don't go on any vacations. We make sure that we give you an episode every single Saturday throughout the year. I know sometimes people will take a little break during the summer, take a break over the holidays. Nah, we don't like to do that. We like to make sure that we continue to provide great content. We are your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens.
Sure are. And what was interesting to me this week is that on one of Amy's, I think it was the Rocket Hockey Report, a new subscriber said, just subscribe to YouTube, love the Rocket Hockey Report, and asked the question, love your YouTube content, do you have a podcast? And yes, we do. The Canadiens Connection, and you can subscribe on all of the apps that you normally get your podcasts on. Absolutely. So we love to recommend the YouTube channel and Amy's shows and the live watch-alongs, and the folks from YouTube love to come back to engage in the podcast as well.
Absolutely. And we love to engage with all of our listeners and viewers. And this week, our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, which veteran NHL players do you believe would make the biggest impact for the Canadiens to compete for a cup in the next 5 years? We want to make sure that we hear from you and get all of your thoughts on that. Text us 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. You can find us on social media as well, but we also have an email. Rick, if people have a little bit more to say, how can they reach out to us via email?
Lots of people still like to reach out to us via email, and our email address is hello@rocketsportsmedia.com.
So we get tons of text, tweets, and emails throughout the week, and we have a couple of interesting ones that we wanted to read. And Rick, we got a message on Instagram. I'll let you take care of that one to start.
Well, we don't promote our Instagram enough, but we do have Instagram accounts both for Habs Connection, at Habs Connection on Instagram. This one happened to come in on our Rocket Sports Instagram. It's at Rocket Sports Media. And this says, "Hey, Team Rocket Sports, I came across your YouTube channel recently and loved your video on Xhekaj. The video called Xhekaj Called Up, Barron Sent Down. I just want to appreciate your efforts, what you've been doing with your YouTube channel, and all the content on the socials. It's amazing. I love it. And we really appreciate your comments, and especially when you have a little praise in there for the work that we do."
Absolutely. And we have one more thing that we'll read out. This one comes from Christopher Pringle on Facebook. Christopher says, "Whole organization rotting on the vine, rot at top. Until an owner with passion and desire for championships takes the helm, the ship will flounder in the basement of all leagues." So Christopher, obviously not too happy with the ownership of the Montreal Canadiens, not too happy with the direction that they're heading in. And of course, we get certainly a mix of different comments, texts, and tweets throughout the week. So I thought this was an interesting one coming on from one Christopher Pringle, who's reached out to us a couple times, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think we've heard from Christopher before, and he is impatient for a Stanley Cup, Calder Cup, Kelly Cup, some kind of cup. He sees the teams all at the bottom, not necessarily, but not where he wants them to be.
So coming up this next week, it's actually pretty light. Just one game. Montreal visits Pittsburgh tonight, Saturday, January the 27th. And then I believe we get a little bit of a week off there with an all-star break. But we'll be back here next week with some more great content. For now, that'll be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for listening. Please make sure that you're subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on any of your favorite podcast apps. You can also share it on social media if you like what you heard. Enjoy the week, and we'll be back here next Saturday, February the 3rd, for another great episode. Thank you for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.